Hello! In this tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate on how to sew a slip stitch. Now the slip stitch is a hand stitch which helps you close up areas like this hole where it's not possible to use a sewing machine, and it'll also look a lot nicer. Obviously with my pillow example here, I want to sew this hole closed and make it look as seamless as possible. So we can take the area from this to this. Let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is to prep our area. The first thing I like to do is on each side, I make sure that it's turned to the inside, whatever your seam allowance is. We're not sewing the raw edge together, we're going to be sewing at the seam line. So here, let me bring this out. This is my raw edge. So I'm just tucking under whatever the seam allowance is. So for me it's a 1/2 inch, so I'm tucking under a 1/2 inch on this side and then a 1/2 inch on this side. So when I pull my seams, you can see we have a folded edge that's meeting in the middle, and that's what we want to see, because if we sew the raw edges it's going to look really sloppy and it's going to look weird. The next thing I like to do once it's folded under, just so that it stays in a place, is I can use a couple of straight pins, and you can see I'm pulling it and then I'm going to stick the pins through, and this is just going to help hold it so it makes it easier for when I'm trying to sew it together. Now we're ready to start the slip stitch. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some needle and thread, and the thread that I'm using is just a regular all-purpose thread. I don't recommend using the embroidery floss because the all-purpose thread is going to be a lot stronger. Also, you want to try to match your fabric as best you can. I'm using a contrasting just so it's a little bit easier for you to see what I'm doing. So it doesn't matter if I start on the top or I start on the bottom. I'm just starting on one side of my opening. And you can see I'm going on the inside of the opening here. And then I'm going to try to come up right on the top fold line there. And I'm trying not to go onto the right side of my pillow fabric, and just stay on the inside. Now I started down here on the inside and I came up on the fold because I want this knot to be tucked in there. So when this is closed, you're not going to be able to see my knot at all. Alright, so now we're on the top. I'm going to grab a little bit of fabric and I try to get as close to that top fold line as possible of the opposite side. And I think the trick with making a really neat looking slip stitch is to make your stitches on the small side. Alright, so we started here. I just grabbed a little bit of this. Now when I pull these threads, it'll start to come together. And you can just see a little bit of my black thread here. So if you do this right, you're hardly even going to see this stitch, especially if you use a matching color. So now I'm on the bottom. Now I'm just going to do the same thing. Grab a little bit of the top, and I'm staying right on that folded edge. And then I'm going to pull that. And now I'm going to do the bottom. So basically you're just zigzagging back and forth between the two sides. So now I'm going to grab this part, trying to stay on that folded edge. And then every single time I take a stitch, I just lightly pull my threads, and you'll see that it'll start to close up as you're sewing it. So there's the beginning. So now I'm just going to finish with the rest of the way and have this hole closed up. I'm getting to my last stitch. So I'm going to show you how I tie a knot for this, just to finish it off. So my last stitch is going to be on the bottom here. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of fabric. And make sure I'm not going through that thread. All right. So I have just a little bit of room here to tie a knot. You're going to grab a little bit of fabric. And it doesn't matter if you're grabbing here or I'm just going to grab right up here, just so I don't have that part here. And you're going to create a loop, and then you're just going to bring your needle through the loop. So there's a knot, and then I just like to do it twice just because I want to make sure that it's definitely not going to come out. Go through the loop one more time. And so you'll see a very small knot. It's pretty hard to get this to be on the inside since we've already closed everything up, which is why it's always a good idea to make sure that you're using a matching thread. Here's what it looks like when my slip stitch is complete and now my pillow is closed and ready to be used. Please make sure to check out other tutorials on hand embroidery stitches from Jack Dempsey Needle Art.